student, I'm Mr. Lang, and in the part 2 of the briefing section of chapter 2 assignment, so I am going to talk about the long questions. So for question 9 is talking about the light microscope, okay? So for the red part and the orange part, I will talk about this first, okay? So for the red part is that Robert used his own self-made compound microscope to observe the cork cells, okay, and then he finds some many units, okay, to make up of the cork, so that's why he named it the cells, okay. But later on, as we know that actually Robert has just has been observing the cell wall only, not the whole cells, okay. And for the orange part is that, and the other scientists, okay, they use the single lens microscope to discover single cell organisms. So before I talk about part A, I would like to talk about the nature of science first, okay? So it is the concept from chapter 1. The nature of science, okay, for the red part, it means that why Robert, okay, can discover the cell, and later on other scientists, they construct or develop the concept of cell theory. All the organisms are made up of cells, something like this, okay? So it is due to the observation, okay, of the nature world, okay. Different method, okay, we can use to observe the world. For example, Robert used the compounded microscope. The other scientists, they use the single lens microscope, okay. So everything is based on the observation, okay. So that's the first idea of nature of science. And the other part is that you can see that self-made compound microscope, and then maybe later on we have single lens microscope, and nowadays we have the electron microscope, okay. So actually the development of science, okay, actually it also depends on the advancement of technology and the type of equipment available at that time, okay. So that's why that's the second idea of the nature of science I would like to talk about before we talk about the questions. So for question A is talking about the scientists. They found that living cells are made up of many the living cells are made up of many cellular structures. That means the organelles, right? Mitochondria, corpus, ER, something like this, okay? And part A, okay, it wants you to state 2 cellular structures present in all living cells, okay? So that means for the dead cell, I ignore it, okay? And also you need to name some very common cellular structure, the organelles, okay, in this question. So you can find the structure, okay, in the books, the animal cells, the plant cells, okay. But one more thing I would like to add is that in this part, okay, it's very lucky that the questions only ask you to name 2 cellular structure, because in other questions they may ask you to name the structures, or they may ask you to state the function at the same time. So that means the marks, okay, will not be 2 marks, okay, maybe 4 marks, okay. Name 2 structure, 2 marks. State their functions, 2 more marks, okay. So read the question carefully. This time we only talk about the name, okay, but I would like, okay, I want you to tell me more about the functions, okay, as well. So that's why I shall give you 2 bonus marks if you can tell me the function of the cellular structures, okay, which you mentioned in these questions. For example, you name the organelles A, okay, and then you give me the function of organelles A. So I will give you 1 more mark, okay, and 2 structure, 2 more marks, okay. So that's part A I would like to talk about. Read the question carefully, okay, read the question carefully. This time we only talk about the cell structure, okay, but maybe in other questions they may ask you to talk about the functions as well. And then for part B, okay, it's talking about how can we control, how can we manipulate, use the microscope to observe the onion epidermis, okay. So how can we prepare, okay, the slide of onion epidermis, okay. So I would like to talk about the microscopic worksheet as well. So for the microscope worksheet, okay, so for the step 1 sectioning, okay, it's just like the step 1, okay, of this table, peeling of epidermis, to make a very thin layer for observation, because if we are using the light microscope, we have to allow light to pass through the specimen freely. Otherwise, we cannot observe it because the specimen will be so thick and then block all the light. Okay, so that's the step 1. And then step 2, staining with iodine solution. Why do we need to do it? Okay, because just guiding question. What do we need to do if the specimen is colorless itself? Okay, so we put it on the gas slide and then add some iodine solution. Okay, the dye, the stain. Okay, on the specimen, because we would like to make it from colorless to become visible. Okay, some books they use the terms visible, some books they use the term distinctive. Okay, but the idea is that to make it easily observed. Okay, to be easily observed. Okay, so that's the part 1. Okay, and then for the other part, add a drop of water to reduce the reflection of the light. Okay, and then also the second part. Okay, how can we flatten the tissues? Okay, so we call the step 3 the mounting. After we put the specimen on the glass slide, after we add the iodine solution to give some color. Okay, so we need to cover it with a cover slip. Okay, so this cover slip can provide a flat surface for observation. Okay, for example, some cells, or maybe for example in last week we observed the cotton wool. Okay, the surface is not flat enough. Okay, and it may be in contact with the objective lens if they are close enough to each other. So that's why we need to provide a flat surface first. Okay, and then for the other one, prevent the specimen from drying up. Okay, even we add water. Okay, if the water is evaporating, okay, and the specimen will dry up, and maybe for example the cell, okay, it will become smaller. Okay, it will shrink. Okay, so that's why you cannot observe it so easily. And then the third one, prevent the objective lens from touching the specimen directly. Okay, even the objective lens is close enough to the specimen. Okay, but at least, okay, it will touch the cover slip first. Okay, it will not directly contact with the specimen. Okay, and last but not least, to protect the specimen. Okay, so that's the part B, the skills of preparing the slide, okay, for the observation under microscope. And then for question 14, okay, is talking about the electron micrograph, okay, of an organelles. So for these organelles, okay, the question also gives you some hints. This organelles is present in large numbers in muscle cells. Why? Okay, so you will have part 3, okay, to answer it. Okay, but for part 1 and part 2, part 1 is talking about the magnification power, and for part 2, okay, it asks you to name the organelles in the figure X. So for the part 1, okay, it asks us to calculate the magnification, but this time we are not using the microscope, okay, to calculate. Remember, when you are using the microscope, we have the eyepiece and we have the objective lens. Okay, so the magnification power is that, for example, eyepiece is 10x, 10 times magnification power, and the objective, the lens, okay, objective lens is 20x magnification power. So that's why we just times them together to 10 times 20 to make 200x. Okay, 200 times magnification power. But this time we do not have such information. But what we have, okay, we have the scale bar, this part, the scale bar, and also the actual length of the this organelles. Okay, so that's why what you need to do is that use the ruler to measure this scale bar. Okay, how many cm, how long is it? Okay, so this scale represents the actual length. That means the object, okay, these organelles, okay, actual length is 2 micrometer. So that's why we use this equation for us to calculate the magnification. So magnification is equal to the size of the image divided by the size of the object. So in this question, actually the scale bar, it represents the length of the image, okay, the size of image, because when we see this electron micrograph, actually that's what we see, we zoom in and see. Okay, so that's the image, okay, for the scale bar. And for the length of the actual length, that means the object, okay, the size of the object. So that's why for the equation, okay, we have magnification is equal to the length of the scale bar divided by the length of the actual length. Okay, so for xcm, you can measure it by yourself. Okay, so that's why I just let x be the scale bar length. Okay, you measure me the distance, okay, the length. So xcm is divided by the 2 micrometer. Okay, so one thing I would like to mention is that the unit, okay, they are not the same, so that's why we need to make them the same first. Otherwise, we cannot calculate the correct answer. And what you can see is that 1 micrometer is equal to 10 to power negative 6 meter, and 1 centimeter is equal to 10 negative power negative 2 meter. So that's why by comparing these two length, okay, actually there is 10,000 times difference. So the simple logic is that 1 centimeter when we times 10,000, okay, we shall get the 10,000 micrometer. Okay, so that's the conversion of the unit. Okay, so for the equation, it will become magnification is equal to x cm. Okay, the number, okay, x times 10,000. Okay, to become the micrometer and divided by the 2 micrometer. So that's why you can use the calculator to calculate the answer. And one thing I would like to mention is that there is no unit. There is no unit for the answer because the unit micrometer will be removed, will be deleted by each other, cancelled. Okay, so that's for the part A1. And then for the A2 and A3, okay, so for part 2, observe the organelles, the structure, okay, double membrane. And for the inner membrane, okay, there are some finger-like projections, okay, so what is it? Okay, you can refer to the book. But one thing I would like to mention is that name the organelle, okay, should it be singular or plural form, okay, be very, very careful, okay, that's for part 2. And then for part 3, we call the concept of adaptive feature because it's asking about explain why muscle cells contain large number of these organelles, okay, it's not talking about the presence or absence of these organelles. It's talking about more or less, okay? So, why there are so many organelles in the muscle cells, okay? You should point out this, okay, for the adaptive feature, okay? As what I say in the class, okay, adaptive feature, it means that you need to link the structure and the function together, okay? So, for this structure, that's the organelles, right? You have to be able to name it, okay, I think. So, the flow is that what is the function of these organelles? How can the muscle work? And I give you a hint is that from by doing muscle contraction, okay? By doing muscle contraction, relaxation, and then move the bones, and then move your whole body to move, okay? And then why are there large numbers of these organelles in the muscle cells, okay? Why are they so perfect match to each other? Okay, these organelles and the muscle cells. Okay, so the answer will be the organelles. Name it. Don't just copy the organelles release energy. I will kill you. Okay, the name of these organelles. Okay, release energy by the process. What is the process of releasing energy? You name it. You learn it in chapter 1. Okay, and the muscle cell require energy, okay? I need the adjective, and this adjective is highly related to the concept of why there are so many these organelles in the muscle cells, okay? So remember, the concept is not talking about presence or absence. It's talking about more or less. More or less, I repeat, okay? So for what? Of course, for the muscle to work, okay? How can the muscle work? How can the muscle work for okay? I think you will know the answer, okay? So that's for part 1, 2, 3, okay? And then for the part B, it's talking about the comparison between the muscle cells and the bacteria cells, okay? Muscle cells are examples of eukaryotic cells. Bacteria cells are examples of prokaryotic cells. So what you are going to do is that to state 3 differences, okay, between the structure of muscle cell and that of the bacteria cells, okay? So one thing I would like to mention is the complete comparison, okay? A has structure 2, but B doesn't have, okay? For this part, compare, because in this question it's talking about the difference. So this time you don't need to talk about the similarity. Just focus on the difference, will be fine, okay? So you have the table in your book already. So please use the complete sentence to do the complete comparison, okay? So I think part B is not that difficult at all, okay? So if you have any question, just leave it in the comment. I will answer you as soon as possible. See you next time. Bye-bye.